Hi, everybody. It's meteorologist Joe Cioffi. Sunday, we are at 11 a.m. Eastern Time, and we're going to uh, go through a lot today. We are looking at Hurricane Florence. We have the latest reconnaissance aircraft reports coming in now, and not only is it clear that Florence is becoming a hurricane, but look at the satellite picture here. Clearly, the system has become much better organized than yesterday, and it's doing it very, very quickly. In fact, the Hurricane Center points out that from what they've seen so far, the core of this hurricane has drastically improved this morning, and it appears that we're going to go into this rapid strengthening phase at some point in the next 2 days. The movement is still to the west. I know a number of you have been asking about the area of disturbed weather that's to the northeast of, I'm sorry, to the northwest of of Florence, and whether that would have any impact. It doesn't appear to be that it's having any impact. The expanding outflow of Florence here, I think, is so dominant. It's hard for me to envision where the room is going to come from for anything to develop there. If something were present there, it certainly could have an impact in pulling it uh, to the north, but we're not certain. We're not seeing any signs of this, and everything is pointing to this system crossing that second hurdle that I had set back a few days ago. I wanted to see it get through the wind shear. It passed that with flying, with flying colors. Not only did it get through the wind shear, but we oftentimes when you have these tropical systems that get sheared apart, it takes they don't they have a real tough time getting back to where they were before the shearing, even if conditions are very favorable for strengthening. Well, it seems that Florence is on its own here in that it went through the shear. It reconstructed itself back to the point now that it's a minimal hurricane with top winds of 75 miles an hour. The core of the hurricane not only came through intact, but it shows signs, as I said, that we could be going into a rapid strengthening phase. So I can't see what stops this from becoming the Category 4 hurricane that most of the model intensity guidance is indicating for this. So I'll let me get this loop up full screen so we can take a look at what's going on around it. And notice we had a strong upper low a couple of days ago sitting over the Bahamas. That dropped southwestward, and as a result, it's created this rather large area of very, very light wind shear conditions across the South Atlantic and the Southwest Atlantic. And bear in mind that the ocean water temperatures between Bermuda and the Greater Antilles are running at least 2 degrees Celsius above average. So this is really important. This is going to be going over 85, 86 degree water or even higher as it moves westward. So it's going to have the warm ocean water temperature juice to get this to become a major hurricane. So the things I want to talk about this today, as we move along, I want to focus on two things. One is the area of greatest threat, and I think that is going to be, the coastal Carolinas at this point. As far as a landfall is concerned, the other issue that I think that we need to also start addressing is the heavy rain issue, because with the way the upper air is setting up, I think that there is going to be the potential for some rather excessive rainfalls for inland areas once the storm moves inland. And this is going to be a very big forecast challenge this week because of what's going on in the upper atmosphere with regards to the track, with regards to the steering currents that are forecast to possibly collapse when this system moves inland into the later on this week, and that really can open the door to some potentially some Noah's Ark rains in some places. Uh, I don't want to suddenly go into hyperbole here, but this could be a big rain producer for somebody down the road. So first, well, let's jump to the reconnaissance aircraft that's in there right now, and it is making its first pass through. These, by the way, of course, thanks to Levi Cowan and Tropical Tidbits, you can go to the where it says on his website. Just go to where it says aircraft recon, and you can see all the missions. And this is a flight that is in progress. So what he has on here is the present satellite loop and the path of the plane. The plane icon is pointed in the direction that the plane is flying in, and it's going to make several passes through this. Each one will be a little bit further to the west, so he can determine the direction of the storm, which way is it moving, and there'll be a central pressure reading each time, a couple of hours apart, and then we can get a sense of whether this system is strengthening rather rapidly. And in fact, the first pressure pass that was reported, 985 millibars. So this is certainly supportive. This suggests Category 1 hurricane, which is what they upgraded it to on the 11 a.m. advisory. And notice we've got those purple wind barbs. And on the east side of the center, the scale is on the bottom there. So the purple is 64 to 83 knots. So we have hurricane force winds being reported east of the center by the Air Force plane, and we get the upgrade to a minimal hurricane. We'll check back on this a bit later on in the live stream. We'll come back to it to see what else he's found as he comes around for the second time. Here's a view of Florence on the infrared loop. And there's that warm spot. Look at, I'm sorry, there's a cold spot there, that dark black that shows up. That could be, where some kind of, where the center probably is, or close to it. It's got a fairly well-defined core. I think that's pretty obvious. It's starting to take on that circular look that tropical storms that when they become hurricanes and they start to gain the circular look, rather symmetric look over time when they eventually become major hurricanes. I think this is going to get there in another day or two. It looks on the satellite, it really does look like it's getting ready to strengthen fairly quickly. Rather impressed. I'm rather impressed with the satellite signature here this morning, particularly because of what the storm went through when it went through that shearing. It's meteorological history is littered with hurricanes that have gone through shearing experiences and getting ripped apart, and they never come back to what they were. So rarely do you do get instances where they do, and I think this is going to be one of those instances. Now, with respect to the landfall, among the challenges that we're going to have here as forecasters is the fact that this thing is moving very, very slowly. Okay, it's just literally inching along to the west at about 6 or 7 miles an hour. So this is a big, this is a problem. If only because we're talking about a lot of time before it gets from here to the coast. However, everything suggests, and there's no reason to argue against it, everything here certainly suggests that we are going to see this thing start to move a bit faster. Once it gets, right now it's dealing with that weakness in the ridge because of the trough that's up in the North Atlantic that we're discussing over the last several days. It's going to miss that trough. If it were not going to miss that trough, it would already be moving northwest or northwestward, and it's not doing that. Still on this westerly course. But It's completely bypassed the trough and the upper ridge starts to build along the off the southeast coast of the United States, you are going to see this begin a faster forward motion to the west or the west northwest. I think that's pretty clear with respect to what the models are indicating, and we're going to take a look at some of the hurricane tracking models from overnight and this morning. The cluster is rather tightly packed here, except for one outlier that has it coming in all along the South Carolina coast, actually just west of Charleston. But everyone else is focusing, all the other models all focusing for some kind of landfall on the North Carolina coast. And it looks like they are mostly south of Hatteras. I think maybe there's a couple of them that straddle the northern flank of the Outer Banks there, but the vast majority of them are bringing this in along the Carolina coast from Cape Hatteras on westward. And this is going to happen toward the end of this week. So there's still time here for it to watch, but always remember that one of the things we look for is when you get these weather models getting tighter and tighter when it comes to their forecast. It lends a higher degree of confidence the tighter the cluster gets. And a good time to remind everybody, if you're watching, those of you who are here all the time know this. Those of you who may be new today, welcome to my YouTube channel. And make sure you hit the subscribe button. It's absolutely free because we'll be live streaming about this all week, obviously. But do not use this map, or for that matter, any of the weather maps that we show you that are outside of the National Hurricane Center's forecast. Do not use the weather models that you see as tools for you to be making decisions with, because that would not be a wise thing to do. Please make sure you consult your local National Weather Service office, and you can get that by going to weather.gov or the National Hurricane Center's website, nhc.noaa.gov, for the official information regarding tropical storms and hurricanes. That's very, very important. And of course, your local officials who know your own local area are extremely important too. You know your area best. I can't really answer questions regarding your local area. I can know my local area, but I don't live in the Carolinas, so I don't really know your geography, your topography, except for the few times I've been there. That's your job. Okay, so there's your model track guidance. The intensity guidance, also very impressive. This is just got the brand new one. It's actually gone even stronger. A vast majority of the models make this, they all have it as a hurricane. The vast majority of the models have it as a Category 3 and or Category 4 hurricanes, and some of them even close to the top of the range for a Category 4 hurricane. So everything says that this is going to start strengthening rapidly. If you look at the slope of the line, the lines that are coming off from the initial time frame at for present time, and then where they reach Category 3 and 4 status, it's basically achieved in the next 60 hours or so. So this thing is going to crank up very, very quickly to go from minimal hurricane to a Cat 4. It could do it in less than 60 hours, and maybe even as fast as 48 hours. Then, of course, you see the rapid decrease in some of these models after 120-hour time frame, which would be sometime Thursday night or Friday, and this is due to a landfall. I would probably suggest that perhaps the intensity models that are holding up a bit higher could either be doing it because, from whatever track that they're using, perhaps it's slower, keeping it offshore longer on a couple of instances. That's just me speculating on my part, but I'm just guessing here. But the vast majority kind of have this thing really crashing in terms of strength. So that's where we have the point of landfall. At least it lends confidence to the fact in terms of trying to forecast that there is going to be a landfall here, even though we have been experiencing occasional runs of models where some of them, the GFS in particular, hangs it out off the coast, never brings it inland. Some of the members of the ensembles from overnight, also brand new ensembles of the GFS. And notice, by the way, now on the 6Z ensembles, that a vast majority of the GFS ensembles are also focused on the North Carolina coastline. There are a couple of outliers, obviously, but you've got a very large number of the members of the GFS ensembles bringing it inland along the Carolina coast. So let's take a look. We have the new NAM, so I think that might be a good idea to take a look at the new NAM and see where it is taking things, because it does go out to 84 hours. So it won't take us to landfall, but it will start getting us close. And you can see here, this is Tuesday afternoon. The NAM, if I want to give you a point, it's roughly at 27 and 66 and a half on the NAM. And we'll go to Wednesday morning, where we have it at 29 and 29.4 and 71.2. Again, a reminder, this is not something you should be using to making decisions. It's just one model, and we're just looking at this for illustrative purposes to see what this model does. We're going to have to take all the models into account, and that's not going to be for until late this afternoon when we get everything in. 29.3 and 71.2 for Wednesday, and then at the last frame here, the 84-hour forecast, which takes us to 8 p.m. Wednesday night, we're at roughly 30.8 and 74.1. We're still on a mainly a west-northwest course here. It shows no signs of changing through the 84-hour time frame. So you want to carry that along on a straight line. At least from the standpoint of the NAM, maybe Myrtle Beach or the North Carolina, South Carolina border, just a guess. Again, that would assume that it's going to keep on moving on the straight line course that it shows up through the 84-hour period, and we don't know that that's the case. That's why you got to be careful when you use a lot of this stuff. You have to remember the context that it's in, and it's not a good idea to make a decision based on a map that only goes out 84 hours and then sort of mentally drawing a straight line, because we don't know what the upper air is going to do and whether that course is going to change. The main determinant, of course, is this upper ridge that is building off the Atlantic seaboard into the mid-Atlantic states and pushing back westward. There is absolutely no flow. Excuse me, had to blow my nose. There is absolutely no flow with regards to the upper air when you look back, when you look up to the northwest. The main Canadian jet stream is still so far displaced, where you see all the tight lines here up in the upper Midwest and going north and west of there. That's the stronger jet stream from Canada, and it's pushed back well up to the north. So the strong winds that would carry it away to the northeast are nowhere close. You've got this upper high that's off the east coast, and that is steering this. And remember, winds are clockwise around highs, so you're getting the flow from the southeast coming from south of Bermuda to the Carolina coast, and the system is basically trapped in that as it moves along to the northwest or to the northwest. One of the things let's move away from the landfall issue for a moment, and I want to talk about what may happen here after we get landfall. And I want to make sure you guys can see everything correctly, because I'm gonna switch sources here. And where is my paint box? There it is. Okay, so you should have front and center now. You should be seeing the paint box that has a map on it, and there we go. Yep. Okay, great. So I actually drew this a bit earlier to show you what's going to happen, and this is the map for a week from today. Uh, all the models have this in some fashion, and this is something that the Hurricane Center actually mentions today in their discussion. So we want to make sure that like I just want to make sure that you guys got this, that you are seeing it, okay? And it hang on, and you're not just having a bit of a tough go here. I just wanted to make sure that you guys are seeing everything what I have in front of me. So you've got the upper high. This is for next Sunday. Now, at this point, what happens is you'll notice there's two upper highs. There's an upper high that I have written there east of Cape Cod. Okay, then I have an upper high. We have an upper high centered back in the southern plains. What's happening is that upper high that builds into the east is going to basically split, all right? And the hurricane is going to track in between it. But at a certain point, you're going to have the highs split away, the one in the west, the one in the east, and Florence may essentially be caught somewhere in the middle. The steering currents there are going to just collapse. There may come a point where this thing, if this verifies, and that's very important, we don't know if this is going to verify yet, there may come a point where the steering currents completely collapse, in which case you could wind up with this thing stalling out or at least slowing down to an absolute crawl somewhere in perhaps eastern North Carolina or even in southeastern Virginia. Now, the thing that would worry me about that is the rain issue, because then you're talking about the potential for mega amounts of rain over a 36 or 48 hour period. And I'm going to come back now. I'm going to switch over to the models again. We'll go back to the GFS model. I think that so we can see at least the rainfall going forward. And okay, good. I got the map up here. So give me 1 second. We are going to also have the new GFS starting shortly. But this is one of the things that worried me about last night. As we take a look at the GFS, you could watch the upper high in the Atlantic. It just kind of starts to split there, and then it's sitting in no man's land with the ridge to the east, the ridge to the west, and I just moved through a period. This is Friday morning, okay? Now we're at Sunday morning. It's barely moved. And now we're at Monday morning and it's still barely moved. So if something like this were to happen, we're talking about days of rain. And in particular, specifically with this model, is the fact that it has it so close to the coast. That would be especially problematic because you would wind up with the circulation, or at least part of the circulation, remaining over the water, which would not only slow any weakening, but you're going to have this kind of constant feed of moisture coming in. And these are, I want to be careful here, folks. I'm not forecasting this, but I'm just trying to illustrate what the potential is. But you know, we're talking about big amounts of rain coming into northeastern North Carolina, eastern Virginia, anywhere that's north and east of the storm track. If you wind up seeing these steering currents collapse, so this is going to be a concern going forward that I think forecasters are going to watch very, very carefully. As I said, you know, I'm not pulling this out of thin air. The Hurricane Center actually discussed this in their forecast discussion today. I actually feel kind of good about this because I was looking at this morning, and I already had my show idea prepped up and ready to go, and then you know, then I saw it mentioned on the Hurricane Center. Sometimes when you're a forecaster, you know, when you're forecasting something, there are times when you look at stuff and you think, are you the only one seeing this? So it feels pretty good to get reinforcement from somebody else that they're seeing the same thing you are, so that you're not thinking that you're going a bit crazy here. Okay, so let me summarize. I'm going to come back to the screen for a second, then we're going to take a look at Tropical Storm Isaac, which is going to be the next issue. And actually, what I'll do is I'll take some questions first with respect to Isaac. Let me just find me. I'm here somewhere. There we go. And okay, I'll bring myself up here this way, and we'll keep Florence there to the side. Make that one just a little bit bigger, and we'll chat a little bit. All right. Just let me bring you up on the screen. Nice crowd around here this morning. Thanks everybody for being here. Israel Frudiger, yes, all the weather models do have that kind of stalling idea. They just sort of have it emphasized in different areas. So the European, for example, takes it a little further inland into western North Carolina. So you would have the same concept. That, you still would have heavy rains with that. The Canadian still remains. It's just the model that's the furthest south and west with all of this, and also slows it to a crawl, but it wants to take it a little deeper into the southern Appalachians. But I think we're certainly at a point where it's very fair to say that the Carolinas, the Carolinas are the biggest risk for the landfall. At least 99 wolves, so it's doing a Harvey. Well, you know what? In some respects, it's not that different from what set up with Harvey with respect to the collapsing upper steering, and Harvey, the signature circulation from Harvey basically getting trapped in between two upper highs. It is rather unusual. I mean, there have been instances of storms stalling in the east. This one is, a bit unusual. It's kind of new to me. I was trying to rack my brains out. Usually when this happens, when they stall out, it might be in the form of a tropical storm, perhaps, or, but we have had, as I said, we've had instances where we've seen steering currents collapse in the east. So I don't know if it's been to this extreme, if we're dealing with a Cat 4 hurricane coming in. Let's see. All right, everybody, just getting a hint here, at least from what's on the chat. Hope everybody's being civil to each other. That's very, 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 very important. Let's see. It has been a while for the Bobby Livingsworth. I think it has been quite a while since the Carolinas have gotten an impact from a major hurricane. I need my statistician Anthony Orr to verify that. He's really good with that, with all the data and the numbers. So if he pops on, maybe he can address that particular question. The areas to the north, by the way, I know those of you who are up in the Delmarva Peninsula, New Jersey, and Long Island, and so on. And I know that I've seen the question pop up, but what about these areas and that and so on. I'm really thinking that the Carolinas look like the greatest risk at this point. The thing to watch for going forward is, do we see model shifts that are perhaps more northwestward or northwestward, where you could wind up with something, say, arcing inland across into the Delmarva Peninsula, Chesapeake Bay, or Delaware Bay. It seems to me that the strength of the ridge is just too strong for us to see that. I don't want to completely rule it out, but every day, every day that goes by, the chances can basically get less and less for those areas up to the north, and that has been the trend over the last few days. So the odds increasing from, say, south of 35 degrees north southward, the odds are increasing. Somebody in there is going to get a landfall, and I've been kind of focusing on east of Charleston to south and west of Elizabeth City, somewhere in there. It's a pretty wide geography, and I understand that, but we're still, a good 4 days away. We're not anywhere close to where the Hurricane Center would put a hurricane watch up. And speaking of which, I think we can at least now. I'll bring up. Let's let me let me bring up the the National Hurricane Center's official forecast, so you can take a look at what they're doing at this point, because they do have it now where on the last period it's going to be inland. So let's see what they did. We'll have it up here in just a second. Bring it front and center. And this is from the 11 a.m. advisory, which is at latitude 24.4 north, 56.3 west. Maximum sustained wind 75 miles an hour, still moving west at 6. They have it a major hurricane faster on this model cycle, so they have a major hurricane by 8 p.m. on Monday. Then keeping it as a major as it approaches the North Carolina coast, and then bringing it inland. It looks like in southeastern what is that? The southwest. How would I describe that? Because it's not southwestern North Carolina. So let's say right along the south, near the North Carolina border on the North Carolina side. Okay, that would be where landfall is. So I'm basically saying south and west of Wilmington, and well south and west of Hatteras. So if you notice, by the way, their cone of uncertainty is where the northernmost point is in the southern parts of Chesapeake Bay, and the South Carolina Georgia border is on the southern end of this. And notice that it's probably going, it will tighten obviously as we get closer and closer. But that's the geographic range. I'm saying Elizabeth City to Charleston. So my area is inside theirs. I have it a little bit tighter than they do. But if you take the midpoint of where my track is and their track is, it's actually very, very close. So we're kind of on the same page, which is always lends confidence. By the way, if you're interested, I'll take this opportunity to mention the fact that I do have my website and meteorologistjoecioffi.com, along with two other websites, weatherlongisland.com and nycweathernow.com. But you can get it all on one platform if you like, and that platform is Patreon. And I just started that, and I'm doing also some exclusive coverage just on the Patreon platform. I've got it up here on the window so you can see what it looks like. It's me with a fish. We've got 28 members so far. It's just $2 a month, and we're welcome to anybody who would like to join up. I'll put the link here on the chat board, and thank you very much for those of you who have joined on the Patreon platform. There's no ads there. Everything comes ad free, and I've been occasionally doing some separate videos just for Patreon members. So if you're really weather geeky, that is a good place to go. Okay, so why don't we at this point switch over, and I'm going to bring up, let me get the other satellite loop going here so we can take a look at the other tropical systems that are out there, because we've got two of them and two other ones. We've got one hurricane and two tropical storms on the map right now. Three in the Atlantic Basin. We're so used to seeing a bunch of them in the Pacific side all at the same time, but it's not often that you get more than a couple at the same time on the Atlantic side. So I'm going to bring that up there for you. Hang on one second. I'm going to just got to adjust the window here. There we go. And there you have it. So there are your three tropical storms that you've got. Hurricane Florence, which is pretty much sitting right in the middle. Then you've got Tropical Storm Isaac, and behind that Tropical Storm Helene. And behind that, it looks like another tropical wave is getting ready to move off the African coast. So very, very busy period indeed, as far as the tropics are concerned. And both Helene and Isaac very well organized at this point. I think we're going to wind up seeing these become hurricanes in the next 24 to 48 hours. And Isaac, which is the one in the Atlantic, in the tropical Atlantic that's further to the west, looks like that will potentially be a threat for the Leeward Islands. If we, I'm looking at the new track model guidance. I've brought that up here. You can see it, that very, very tightly clustered. The vast majority of the models taking it across the Southern Leeward Islands. And it seems like it will be a minimal hurricane when it does so. There are going to be some wind shear issues developing as it approaches the leewards. Some of that is going to be related to the expanding outflow from Hurricane Florence. And there's sort of this semi-permanent zone of wind shear in the Eastern Caribbean because of the interaction of the land masses to the south with South America. You oftentimes get strong winds that in the upper atmosphere that kind of sit there most of the time in the Eastern Caribbean. So that might help weaken things out. But you've got, if we wind up with a hurricane approaching here for the Southern Leewards, this is not good. Obviously, because of what they went through last year with Irma and Maria, perhaps some of the same islands could be seeing impacts from this. And I'm not really too familiar. We have heard, we know what the situation in Puerto Rico is that gets coverage, but there's been much less coverage regarding some of those islands where we've had a couple of the islands where they've taken where every human being was taken off the island, and those islands wound up being deserted for the first time in over 400 years. So we really don't know how much of the infrastructure has been restored, how much communications have been restored in those islands. But we're going to bring up, I'm going to bring up the maps. We'll take a look at what the models are doing with respect to Isaac and the islands. So here we go. Let me, we're going to use the old run because we don't have enough of the new GFS at the moment. But here is, should start to see its approach here at some point. Let me just back it up. There we go. So you can see there's Florence well north of Puerto Rico, east of the Florida coast, and northeast of the Bahamas. Here's Isaac on the GFS as it approaches the islands. It doesn't have it as a particularly strong system. In fact, it has the pressures rising as it approaches. So it does indicate some weakening, at least from the standpoint of the GFS model. The European, and we can actually kill two birds with one stone here. You're going to see the European with Florence approaching. I'm going to use the, I'll switch to the other map, the sea level pressure anomaly, because you'll get to at least follow the L's along. And here's the Europeans track. You can see Isaac coming in to the leewards, and the European seems to hold it a bit more intact than the GFS does. And Florence, meanwhile, on the European from last night, comes in right along right in that zone I described there, which is right along the South Carolina, North Carolina border, right along the coast and on the North Carolina side, and moving northwestward. And by the way, this is the difference where the GFS has it in eastern North Carolina stalling out. The European has Florence stalling out more in western Long Island, western Virginia. This is a very, very bad scenario if this happens for the Blue Ridge Mountains and for the mountains of western Virginia, western North Carolina with respect to rainfall, because those areas have been clobbered with rain this summer. Some places getting 30, 40 inch, a year's worth of rain in less than 2 months' time. So that's a big deal here. That's why that part of the equation is so very important, or may become increasingly important as we move through the week. Let's put it that way. On top of having to deal with the actual landfall. And with respect to Isaac, the European wants to kind of take it straight westward into the Caribbean, loses its identity as you get to the latter part of the forecast period. That may or may not be real. I don't know, but that's way down the road. The first thing is the impact of the leewards, and it would be approaching the Leeward Islands Wednesday night. As far as Helene is concerned, we'll bring up another region here. We can take a look at the whole tropical Atlantic perspective and watch these three systems in play. I'll start with the European from last night. So the one that's furthest to the east is Helene, and that's going to turn northward because we do have, if you look straight north of Helene, which at this point the European has it down to a 963 millibar low, so this could become a major hurricane. It's not impossible. If you look to the north, there's a trough that develops in the central Atlantic, and that draws Helene northwestward along 40 degrees west, and it actually continues northwestward from there right through the European's 10-day forecast period. I don't know how reliable that is, but it certainly seems like it's going to make the turn. And Isaac ahead of it, of course, goes pretty much straight westward, and you see Florence there from where it is now, and moving west-northwestward, passing well south of Bermuda and heading toward the U.S. East Coast. Going to be a very, very busy week. And I actually have a very busy day because I'm working TV this afternoon, which is my next stop after we're done here, as soon as I can find me. So let me just shrink this guy up, and we'll bring the satellite loop front and center here. Actually, let's just do this, and then I can get a bigger shot of there's Hurricane Florence sitting out in the Atlantic. Okay, so let me come back to the board so I can get a few more of your questions. What is the likelihood of the European model being correct? Blake Nakagawa, thank you for the question. The European model has kind of had mixed results lately, going in one direction or another, and sometimes it's very good and sometimes it's not so good. It's usually pretty good when it comes to these tropical systems, so I'm kind of relying on it a bit more heavily than the others. It's been very good with Florence so far. The GFS, I don't want to imply that the GFS has necessarily been bad. I can't rule out the GFS's idea. The models are not that different, really. When you look at them, they're all kind of orchestrating the same thing when it comes to the track and the potential for it to slow down and stall. It's the fact that they are apart by 100 or so miles. And of course, in this instance, 100 or so miles makes a huge difference, especially when it comes to landfall, because if the landfall's over you and you're experiencing hurricane conditions, if you're 100 miles to the northeast, you more than likely will not be under fierce hurricane conditions. So that's where the difference lies. Models are trending north, Scrub Keela, probably Keela fortnight, probably because as we get closer through to time, they seem to be getting a handle on a better handle on the strength of the upper high, which is really going to be the driving force of this system in terms of how far north it gets. The weaker the upper high is, the further north it's going to want to go. The stronger, probably the further west and south. I think now we're at the point where we're just kind of seeing subtle changes with regards to the strength of the upper ridge. Some runs tend to be a little bit stronger, some runs tend to be a little bit weaker. But I think we're past the point where we're going to see some huge radical change in the strength. I think now we're at the point where we're just kind of fine-tuning it. So look for the shifts, look for the model shifts going forward to be smaller and smaller. Look for their positions to get a little tighter, a little tighter. If it winds up getting wider, then that creates a huge forecast headache. So part of me saying this is because of experience, knowing that as we get closer to time, usually the variations in the model and the model difference do tend to get tighter and tighter. I just don't want to have to deal with a possibility that they suddenly start getting wider and wider. At this point, again, just to, in general, for those of you, I just saw it mentioned again, asking about places well to the north, like New York City, New Jersey, Long Island. A direct hit at this, a direct pass, a direct hit coming in from off the Atlantic from the southeast. That's what I'm referring to. Seems very unlikely at this point. I think we can begin to safely focus away from that area of the East Coast and focus further south onto the Carolinas, because that seems, based on what we're looking at with the weather models, that's where the main emphasis is going to be with regards to the track of Florence. Could we have some adjustments going forward? Sure. The one thing I would also maybe put on the table for those areas to the north is that even though if the steering collapses and you do wind up seeing this system sit there, eventually something is going to come down from the northern jet stream that's going to try to pick it up. Now, whether it picks it up and moves it straight northeastward up the coast, like the late afternoon GFS run showed yesterday, or which I think is probably a more likely scenario, is that something comes down in that northern jet and eventually just kind of kicks that out to the northeast or east-northeast offshore. That is something that we'll have to examine over the next couple of days, because that part of the equation is, I think, still yet to be worked out, and that's something that may come, we may have to start addressing later on this week. Right now, I think the focus of attention should be, first things first, where the landfall is going, where the biggest risk and the landfall is going to be, and that would be for the Carolinas. If up until through the point that landfall does occur, areas to the north may not see very much going on. It may actually be just a typical late summer day for much of the northern mid-Atlantic and the northeast areas in southern New England. So just understand that the northern extent of where the serious weather is going to occur is going to be rather limited to a short distance of 100 or 150 miles north of wherever the circulation moves ashore. After that, there will be other things to consider with regards to where the rains go, how the circulation, what happens to the circulation when it moves inland. It may tend to expand and fan out somewhat and expand the area of where the rain is, but that's not coming, till a week from now. So I'm not really going to be too concerned about that at the moment. Thank you very much for the kind words, Lydia McDonald. Thank you. It's nice to hear that somebody likes my channel. I really appreciate it. Okay, so I'm going to leave it here at this point, folks. Thanks very much for being here today on my YouTube channel. Once again, let me just bring up again that I do have everything in one platform to make things easy, and that's on my Patreon platform. I just put the link up there for you if you're interested, or you can see the link that's on the descriptor to this video. That'll take you to the Patreon site, and it's I'm asking for a couple of bucks a month. It's a small, easy way to support my channel. We do live streams every day. We'll be doing some live streams straight for the Patreon channel, and you can actually message me directly on Patreon. I'm not taking direct messages anymore from through Facebook. I'm going to be doing it strictly through the Patreon, and there's also an app for that. So you can check it out if you're interested. By all means, love to have you on board. And please, as we said earlier, consult your local National Weather Service office or the National Hurricane Center regarding decisions you may have to make in regards to the threat from tropical storms or hurricanes. Weather models that we show you here are not to be used for making decisions. That is extremely important. I can't emphasize that enough. And we're also a participant in the Amazon Services LLC program, which is an affiliate advertising program designed to provide a means for this channel to earn fees by linking to Amazon and their affiliated sites. If you shop on Amazon using the link on the descriptor of this video, you get your stuff, and Amazon sends me some coin out of their pocket, and I get a few cigars out of the deal, which is a good thing. PRJ Grudge, thank you so much for hitting super chat. I really appreciate it. I'm sorry I was late to acknowledge that, but I really appreciate those of you that have hit super chat along the way. Here's my schedule for the rest of the day. So I'm going to be at WPIX TV in New York City. I'll be on at 5 p.m. and 10 p.m. and there is a webcast that we do, so I'll put up a link to it somewhere later today, probably on my Facebook page. I don't think I will be able to get to a live stream again on YouTube, other than the fact that if I do it off my phone, and then I'm going to have to take screenshots off a computer, and that's not always the best thing to do. I kind of like this way, using the software that I have on my desktop, on my laptop, so that I can talk and show you the maps at the same time, and it kind of looks better. I'll be in the Pick Studio, so it'll have the TV studio look to it. So I'll see what's going on later. If there's some major important changes, I'll jump in. Otherwise, I'll probably do a Facebook live stream on my Facebook page, meteorologist Joe Cioffi. So watch for that. Back to work to normal on Monday, so we will try and get double live streams for tomorrow, one tomorrow morning and one tomorrow evening, and I'm imagining we'll be doing double live streams all week long. Thank you so much. Those of you who are here for the first time, appreciate you being here. Do subscribe to my YouTube channel. That's absolutely free. It doesn't cost you a dime, and you get notified when we do these live streams, which usually are once a day when the weather is quiet, and twice a day when the weather is good. Ryan Ford, I gotta go. I'm sorry, and I don't think enough of the 12Z GFS is out at this point, because we're ending this just before noontime. That it would go far enough. So I think we're going to hold that till later on today. All right. Have a great rest of your Sunday, everyone. Thank you again, and we'll see you hopefully a little later on.